Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. All right, well, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and I'm so excited today to talk about a topic that is, again, kind of at that beginning level, because I know so much of my audience is sober curious or sober stuck or still trying to get momentum and traction in finding the freedom you really want from alcohol. And so today, I really want to talk about moving forward. And that looks like, do we use self-compassion or do we use tough love? And I think this is a conversation that we don't always have. So I want to break it down in a couple of ways. And the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of beating ourselves up. So when we think about how we talk to ourselves, when we're in the throes of drinking and over drinking, there always is a lot of negative talk. There's a lot of self-blame and critical voice in our head. There's a lot of berating ourselves and guilting ourselves and even shaming ourselves. We tend to talk to ourselves like, what the hell is the matter with you? And this will never work. Oh, you're such a loser. Like, how could you do that again? And what we know from the science of behavior change is that that doesn't work. So that is not helpful. And how do we know that just from, our own journey? If it worked, if we could blame and shame and guilt ourselves into behavior change, we wouldn't need diet books, we wouldn't need rehab, we wouldn't need life coaches. But it doesn't work because what happens is we get more defeated and we can't move forward from a place of defeat. So this is where the idea of self-compassion comes into play. And self-compassion is a critical part of this journey. We want to let ourselves off the hook for being a human. One of the things we often forget is that alcohol is addictive to humans. And so we tend to make it our fault if we're over drinking. But the reality is that that's what alcohol does. Alcohol builds a tolerance. It creates changes in our brain. Our brain makes meaning out of what's happening with the alcohol. And we find ourselves in a place of drinking or over drinking more than we want to. And so we get to let ourselves off the hook in a really positive way because we know that lasting change comes from positive emotion. So that feels really good, right? To have this newfound self-compassion. And so I don't want to negate the importance of self-compassion. And in this Naked Mind methodology, where I trained as a sober coach, we talk about the pause and we talk about mindful drinking and we talk about data points and we do it in a way that is loving and kind. And we recognize that most people aren't drinking one day and then not drinking the next forever. Now, when I say most people, that actually is my own journey. I'm going to talk about that more in the next couple of weeks. But most people, there is a back and forth and an ebb and flow of, making progress and then, the cha-cha, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps sideways, 1 step forward. And it feels like a very complicated dance. And so when we can let go of having to count days and make only forward progress, that can feel like such a relief. And that is a beautiful energy to bring to the beginning of your journey. But what I want to talk about today is this place where sometimes we allow self-compassion to turn into something that is more like a free pass. And we can surround ourselves with other supportive, sober friends or people in support groups who say, oh, yeah, it's okay. It's just a data point, or you're still figuring it out. It's okay. And that is good to a point. But I want to talk to those of us that might be feeling like, I've been in the pause, where I allow myself to drink while I figure things out, and I'm still in the pause a year later or 2 years later. Sometimes these are my clients that come to me and they say, I'm in this place where I should know better by now. And I want to say, yes, that's true. And so just because we know better, we don't always do better. But let's talk about where we can use the pause and mindful drinking and self compassion in a way that moves us forward. So I just want to define the pause for those of you that might not be familiar with that particular phrase. And it was something that was kind of coined by Annie Grace, again, This Naked Mind, where I trained. And so it's a lot of my listeners are familiar with it. But if you're not familiar with the pause, this is where we take a step back from the berating ourselves and beating ourselves up. And instead, we take the pressure off and we, instead of trying to focus on behavior only, we focus on learning. We focus on understanding the deeper why. And I love this because as a functional nutritionist, which was my first coaching certification, it was all about root cause. And so that is such a difference between just treating the symptom, treating the Band-Aid. Like so many times people will look at other people's behaviors and they'll say, well, why can't you just get to the gym? Or why can't you just stop drinking? Like, what's the big deal? But the reality is that, we're in this place of only the focus on behavior. And that just is not the whole picture. We have to understand the why, the thoughts that are creating this loop. And one of the thoughts can be this idea that it's okay because I'm just taking a break. I'm just in the pause. I'm just learning. And the other language that I want to just revisit is this idea of a data point. So there's a lot of ways to think about and a lot of different descriptors for when someone who is on a sober journey has a slip. We've heard it called a slip. We've heard it called fall off the wagon. We've heard it redefined as lots of things. And so one of the definitions is this idea of a data point. And I actually really like the idea of a data point because when we're collecting data, we're learning. And learning allows us to grow. And so as long as we're learning, that's a beautiful energy. But where we fall into this trap of self-compassion sometimes is when we use a data point and continued data points, and we kind of make excuses and we allow ourselves to just be learning way past what we need to do. And so sometimes we have to step in and remind ourselves, like, I have enough data. I know what this journey looks like. I don't need more data about what it feels like the day after I drink or anxiety that I felt. So we want to be careful with data points because we can get to a place where we start to think of like, well, I'm just collecting data. It's okay. And well-minded people might say, yeah, it's okay. You're learning. But there comes a place where the learning has to turn into action. And that's really this place of moving forward. And that's where it might be time for some tough love. So if you are in this place where you might be feeling like, well, I can always start again tomorrow, or I've had 30-day breaks in the past, so it's okay if I'm doing some drinking right now. Or I'll come back to this after the wedding because I can always stop. That's a place to really explore. Is that good enough? We get into this place where if our alcohol use is less than it was, and we start to feel some level of control about it, we might take off the breaks and we might say, it's okay to have a few drinking days. This feels pretty good. And I want to say that that's not really moving forward. And that's where I like to really talk a little bit about the idea of tough love. So, when do we maybe need to assess tough love? So, I want to share with you three things about the pause. So, if you are in a place where you've decided to continue to drink while you understand more about your drinking, while you get to that bigger why, if you are literally in a place where you're done with beating yourself up, bravo. However, we need to be very tactical when it comes to the pause. So I always tell my clients that the pause should look like drinking less over time. And this can look like taking a day off of a week so that we have one less day we're drinking. It can look like delaying when we start drinking each evening. So instead of starting at 5 o'clock, we start at 7 o'clock, and then we find ourselves drinking less. So we're drinking less over time. And that is the key to using the self compassion of the pause, but not falling into that area where we're letting ourselves off the hook again and again. The other way that we know that the pause is being used as intended, and it's a temporary tool to help us move forward, is that our drinking thoughts are changing. We're finding that like, oh, I don't have to have a drink every time I feel stressed. Oh, I don't have to have wine when I go to the restaurant. And so, if you are experiencing new thoughts around drinking and you're challenging the old thoughts, then that's a beautiful place to confirm that you're in the right type of self compassion. But if you are just saying, I'm in the pause, but you're not doing the work of the pause, you're not exploring the drinking and the thoughts around drinking and drinking less, then that's a place to maybe consider some tough love. And tough love is a phrase that I chose just because it's something that people are familiar with. And I don't think it's black and white. I don't think tough love is we go back to beating ourselves up or we abandon someone and say, well, tough love, figure it out. That's not my definition of tough love. My definition of tough love is, when is it time to start to remind ourselves that we can be more accountable, we can do hard things, that we are responsible. It's not our fault, but we are responsible for this change, and that we can literally start to put some things in place that are going to help us move forward. And they're going to help us abandon the idea of data points and it's okay. I just get to stay in the pause as long as I need to. I'm learning and growing. If you've fallen into that trap, it's time to take more accountability. So, what does that accountability look like? That accountability can be making a declaration for a period of time of not drinking. It can be putting into place a defined break, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30 days. And it can be holding yourself accountable. And holding yourself accountable might look like sharing with a group. It might look making a declaration to a partner or loved one. It could look like hiring a coach and saying, I'm ready to be accountable to not only the thoughts, but also behavior change. Because the reason we change our thoughts is to assist us in the behavior change. So we know that no behavior happens, no action happens without a thought and an emotion. And so it's so powerful to explore these thoughts. But at some point, thinking about change is not enough. We have to actually do the thing. We have to step out and encourage, and we have to actually not drink. And that's where the tough love comes in, because will it feel hard? Probably. Will it be uncomfortable? almost definitely. And how do we make that okay? We make that okay by saying, look, it's worth it. We do a little of that tough love language. We do it in a way that is still compassionate, but we want to know that we're using the tools that we have and we're saying enough is enough. And as I mentioned before, it actually came out of a group I was coaching. They said, I remember when one person in the group said, I don't need any more data points. I have enough data to know that I don't want to drink. So one of the questions that I always ask my one-on-one clients when they come to me and they're considering working with me is, what does success look like for you? Because this is where the rubber meets the road, right? If you are someone who wants to change your relationship with alcohol, I want you to do it with self-compassion, but I also want you to do it with a fair measure of toughness. And that toughness comes from love, comes from self-compassion, comes from accountability, comes from reminding yourself that you're stronger than you might be pretending to be. So that tough love comes from a place of reminding yourself that you're stronger than you might be pretending to be. And so there is a place for only self-compassion and the pause, but we can't stay in that place because that place will end up in a loop. And that loop looks like making a little bit of progress and stepping back, making a little bit of progress and stepping back. And how do I know this? Because I have seen it so many times with my clients and in the groups that I coach. And so I don't want you to be stuck in this loop. I want you to realize the beauty of using self-compassion and tough love to make this progress and this change that you want not only actionable, but possible and exciting. One of the benefits of using self-compassion and tough love is that we really get to lean into the best parts of ourselves. We get to experience the hard parts, but we get to triumph over those hard parts. And for all of the alcohol-free people that I have connected with in the last, 4 years as a coach, but almost 8 years as an alcohol-free individual, I want to say that the beauty of that is having more belief in ourselves. And so if you are in this place, I want you to challenge yourself. I want you to believe more. I want you to lean in. I want you to experience the beauty of this transformation that comes from this beautiful dance between self-compassion and tough love. So I hope that was helpful. I'm thinking about you who are on the beginning of your journey or feel like you just can't get traction. And so I want to know, did this episode help? And if it did, if you know someone who is stuck, would you please share it with them? Because the beauty of the sober edge is helping other people find their sober edge. So I'm here for you and I would love to connect with you. And if you're looking for a one-on-one coach and you're listening to this in real time, August of 2023, I have just one opening left. Last week I had 2, and as of today, I have 1. So I want to invite you to consider working with someone who will help you be accountable and lean into the hard parts. You're stronger than you think, and I can't wait to help you find freedom. All right, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Hey, I want to thank you for tuning in and listening to The Sober Edge. This is a place to have important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, 5 Healthy Reasons to Take a Break. And I would be grateful if you would take a moment to rate and review this podcast so together we can reach more people who are looking for their sober edge.